About ready to get this party started. Our computer things didn't work. So, that should be all right. So we're about ready to get started, folks. Everybody wants to find a place to sit, find a place to roost. Hey Rex, stay up here. Heidi. Heidi. So folks, I want to welcome you to the Extravaganza of Enlightenment. Glad to have you here. We have a lot more people that are paid to show up, so if they show up, make sure you make a little room for them. Ted, the manager who came and opened the bathrooms, let's give Ted a hand for opening the bathrooms. You can park right across from here. There's grass. You can park there in the grass if you want to. There's also a cement slab over there you can park on if you need to do that. Bathrooms out the door to the left. Men and women, I just got paper in there, so good to go. Let's have a round of applause for toilet paper. So we appreciate you being here. There's donuts. We're going to have lunch for you if you don't like the lunch. There's a lot of places around. And we're very happy to have a great group of people here today. I want to announce, first of all, Jenny Moonstone. Please come up here, Jenny. Everybody say hi to Jenny Moonstone. Jenny will be speaking to us, and you can see yourself right there on the live stream if you want to say hello to everybody.
Oh, look at that. Oh, hi, everybody. Hi, girl. Hi. Thank you for having me.
So say something about you.
Okay, so I'm Jenny Moonstone. I am a tarot reader, a psychic intuitive, and I feel really, really lucky. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this, so if I stumble and I totally suck, please bear with me. Doing the very best I can. Thank you for having me. I'm going to go sit down.
My pleasure. Her husband Drew's with her. Jenny Moonstone. And we also have the man. Let's wait for the man. Heidi Vandenberg, come on down. Heidi Vandenberg. You see yourself right there. You want to say hi to everybody in the live stream.
Hi, guys.
We are real, and we're actually together for the first time.
Yes. Hi.
Heidi Vandenberg, tell us about yourself.
So I'm from Maryland, Channel 27. I am a Vedic astrologer, life coach, and I'm really excited to be here, and it's so good to see everybody, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Heidi Vandenberg. If I could do a drum roll, can somebody do a drum roll? Drum roll. Ladies and gentlemen, the Elvis thing would be appropriate. 2001. Da-da! Gentlemen, the man, the myth, the legend, live in person, eater of grandma's sandwiches. Ladies and gentlemen, Rex Bear.
What's up, shapeshifters? Hello.
Everybody here knows who you are, but maybe there's somebody that doesn't, so tell us a little bit about you, Rex.
I am a reptilian shapeshifter that lives in Grandma's Garage, San Antonio, Texas. I have a YouTube channel, Kobe Project. So I met Jeff. He's a shapeshifter too.
I am.
Hello.
And let me just say this, ladies and gentlemen. If it wasn't for Rex Bear, we wouldn't be here, because Rex Bear introduced me to Heidi, Heidi to me, Jenny to Heidi, Jenny to Dan, Dan to Jeff, Jenny to Dan to Jeff to Rex. Rex did it all.
Yes.
And Rex has mentored us. Rex, and we have baby channels compared to Rex's channel, almost 200,000 people. There's really nothing in it for Rex, but he's a mentor, he's a giver, he's a guy that is committed, and we're both 9 at clubs, by the way.
Hello. I knew it. That's why I like it.
So, sincerely, my deepest thanks to Rex Bear. Let's give him a great extravaganza. Yes, Rex will be our keynote speaker, so there you go. And our first speaker of the morning is a man that, how did we meet, Dan?
I think I left a comment on your YouTube videos, and then you commented back, hey, I guess you must have checked out my website.
Yeah.
Hey, why don't you come on my show?
No, actually, I ask everybody that I talk to if they want to come on my show. And every now and then somebody says yes. It's the same strategy I used when I used to date. If you ask enough girls for a date, sooner or later, somebody's going to say, yeah, why not? So that's how we met.
Yeah, they did an hour interview, and then the next one was almost 2 hours.
Oh, that's right. Excellent. So Dan runs the Overwatch Project. He also has the Overwatch channel on YouTube. And I don't even know your last name, Dan.
Contento.
Dan Contento. of the Overwatch channel. Ladies and gentlemen, make him feel welcome. Dan, come on down. So that's the live stream. You can kind of try to keep yourself, you can adjust that, try to keep yourself in the live stream, maybe.
Okay.
So everybody can see you.
Yeah.
Sure, let's do this. Let's do a selfie. All right, Dan. Take your time. Have a good time.
Hey, I think you should adjust the camera. It's not very, it's like staring up. Yeah.
Where do we want to put it?
I think it should be like
Back there?
maybe on the side or like
On the
that.
side or
But
somewhere?
it's not up our noses. Yeah.
Maybe I wanted to see noses. So,
That's better, I think, maybe. It'll have.
Or you can prop that box up.
ooh, how about that?
That's good.
All I can see now is a light bulb. There we go.
Well, you'll,
That's way better.
That's better.
is that way better?
Way better.
Way better.
Yeah.
And continue to make suggestions. This is a very open forum.
You can take that box, or not that box, but the other box, and put it up on its side and make a.
Is that a good angle, Rex?
That looks pretty. I mean,
You good?
I think it looks good.
Okay, you can see the thing. Okay.
yeah, that looks good.
All right, cool.
That's a good.
That's a
shot
good
for you.
one.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dan from Overwatch Channel.
Okay, so I guess I should start at the beginning, which is where I was born in New Jersey, and I was born into a traditional Italian Roman Catholic family. So I went from kindergarten all the way to high school in Roman Catholic school. And
Dan, can you speak up a little more?
yeah, sure, sorry. So I was heavily indoctrinated in that religion, and although I didn't quite buy it, for some reason as a child, my parents they were very able to let me have an open mind and ask questions. It was never like overly strict in my house. So I would drive my teachers crazy because as they would teach me things, even as an early age, I would always question things. Things just didn't make any sense to me. And as a young child, I had a clairvoyant experience one night where I was helping my dad in the backyard digging a foundation for a tool shed we were building, and in this moment, in the cold air, it was quiet. I don't know if my mind just quieted down, and there was an arrowhead, a Native American arrowhead, under my feet in the ground. And somehow I visualized it in my head, and then I dug it up out of the ground and discovered it there. And from that moment on, I knew there's something more to what I've been told about reality. So from then I started questioning everything. I became interested in sci-fi, big fan of like Star Trek, the original series when I was growing up. A lot of stuff that's cool today wasn't cool when I was little. So. Interested in computers and technology early. Took several semesters in college in psychology. So I had this really rounded sort of education, but I was indoctrinated into this Christian mindset. So even though I didn't buy into what the Catholics were telling me, I figured there had to be something authentic in there. And eventually I started in law enforcement, and I spent 30 years in law enforcement as a park ranger, as a dispatcher, as a cop on the street for 25 years. And then I retired right after 2012. And I don't know, I can remember having odd interests as a child too. Like when I would watch the news, something would bother me. I would, 10 years old, but my parents had the news on, would see Dan Rather there talking. Something was telling me this stuff is just not right. Like what I'm hearing is just not right. After I retired, I had more time to think than ever before. And I don't know if something actually happened in 2012. I don't know if, because I would always like make fun of the 2012 version. Like, yeah, the Earth's nothing's gonna happen. December 21st went, and I knew people that racked up their credit cards because they were expecting like the end, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna stay debt free, thanks. And eventually, after that, I started to have this really strong desire to really kind of try to answer that question, we all seem to have, which is, why are we here? Why is there something rather than nothing? Is there actually some religion that's true, or some spiritual belief that's true? What about what atheists have to say? I kind of looked at everything. So in 25 years of law enforcement, I had this great opportunity to develop investigative skills that led me to be very intuitive with when I listen to people, to look past their appearance, their accents, their races, their sexes, their issues, to listen to information and separate that from all the other garbage that comes in when you're listening to somebody. And for my psychology training in high school, in college, there was all this stuff I learned about cognitive issues that people have. And I started to realize, because when I first started this, in my first YouTube videos, I was listening to these truther videos, and I was investigating all the stuff that I was hearing there. But there was all this like religion stuff that could get shoved in there, and some of it just didn't make sense to me. So then I finally broke down. I said, well, look, if I really want to know about my own personal religion, I better actually do the hard work. So I read the entire. At the time, I should backtrack a little bit. Both my parents had come down with cancer, and I was busy taking care of them, and they lived in Cape Coral, I lived in Venice. So I would drive an hour a day down there, an hour back. So I had plenty of time, and I used that time to go through the entire Bible cover to cover to really see what it said. And the first time I read it, it really didn't make any sense to me. And then I read it again, and then I listened to what apologists said. And then I just used simple English comprehension skills to read what these books were saying. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense at all compared to what, So I started looking at the bigger picture. And then there's something we do if you're good in law enforcement or investigation. They always drill into your head in training. It's the totality of everything. If you're investigating something and you don't look at the totality of everything, then you're going to miss out, you're going to be suspecting the wrong person, you're going to be going down the wrong trail. So I had to look at everything. So I listened to, read books what atheists had to say, I looked at what all types of different belief systems and religions were saying, and I looked at the data that started to come to my attention, which was the paradigm shift for me, was the near-death experience data. Now, when I started looking at that, and case after case of these near-death experiences, I noticed something that was defying all what we're all really being told by religions, and it was defying what atheists were telling us. So this was outside of all the general information. Now, at the time, I had no knowledge of Gnosticism or what the Gnostics were saying. I didn't know anything about that because I still had a lot of indoctrination, a lot of brainwashing that was in me at the time, and Gnosticism or that type of stuff was forbidden. It was considered, it's just wrong. So I didn't look at it right away. But I started coming down with this, all these cases of near-death experiences, and the key with the near-death experience cases is that there is veridic data, or what they call verifiable data, in those cases. They're different than out-of-body experience cases and all these other phenomena, because what happens in a near-death experience is there's so many cases that a person will have a cardiac arrest. This is just using a hypothetical, general example of what could happen. A person has a cardiac arrest in a hospital. Suddenly they have an experience that they're out of their body. They're looking down at themselves, and they're able to see and witness things while the doctors know that they're clinically dead, okay? And they may even go outside the room or travel back to their house, and they're able to witness things. Now, the doctors document this when the patients tell them that, and then this is called verifiable data because the doctor says, yeah, that did happen, or this happened. There's really classic cases like the Pam Reynolds case, if anybody's familiar with that case. Does anybody here ever hear of the Pam Reynolds case? No. Okay, Pam Reynolds, back in the 90s, was a woman. She was a singer. She had a brain aneurysm that was going to kill her. So in the 90s, they were going to do an experimental procedure on her. This is a very profound case because the doctors were going to kill her to try to save her. So they were going to drain all the fluid. You can look it up. It's a fascinating case. They were going to kill her to try to save her. They were going to freeze her. They were going to drain fluids out of her body. They were going to essentially lower her body temperature down to 66 degrees. They inserted probes in her ears that would click 100 decibel bursts into her ears. Everybody knows that's really loud. And they had taped her eyes shut. And this was a several hour-long procedure to get into her brain to remove her aneurysm and save her life. Now, the doctors verified that there's absolutely no way this woman could have known anything that was going on during the operation. But while she was out and dead, clinically dead, and she came out of her body, she's looking down in the operating room and she's witnessing the doctors. Apparently one of the surgeons plays a certain type of music while he's operating and she could hear the music. She's experiencing something common in near-death experiencers, which is a 360-degree vision, complete awareness of everything that's going on around her room, and she is watching the nurse try to inject something into her thigh, and the nurse is complaining that I can't get this needle in here, I can't find the vein or whatever she was looking for.
Amazing.
And at the time, the doctor said, well, just use the other leg. And so the nurse switched sides. Then they rolled out this toolbox. Now keep in mind, Pam Reynolds had not ever seen the tools they were going to use to operate on her. And they told her she was going to have her head sawed open. So in TV, movies, and television shows, when you see that, they use a prop that looks like a round buzzsaw. And that's what everybody would have. So if you were imagining this, your imagination would naturally tell you what you've seen in fiction. But that's not what she saw, and that's not what she reported. She said the doctor took a toothbrush out and used that on my head. Now, that's what she said it looked like. Now, the tool that they use to drill into her head actually looks like a dental toothbrush. So, she reported all this accurately. Then she has another experience where she's pulled away into a tunnel of light, and she sees she's overwhelmed with ecstasy and bliss, and then she asks like some voice, what is that? Is that God? And the answer she got was that is the breath of God. And then she's told, you have to go back. And then she's sent back to her body, and then she recovers. She reports all this, and there's documentaries about her and the doctors. They're all interviewed. You can watch them all on YouTube, and they verify this. That's one case, but there's thousands of cases like that of near-death experience data out there. So when atheists kind of blow that off, and for no apparent reason, they always say extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence. But that is actually extraordinary evidence. Mm-hmm. And there is, now this is something I noticed, when standard Christianity has a problem explaining something really bad in the Bible, they have apologists come out and they tell you what you're reading, what it means. So, because what you're reading doesn't make any sense, so they come out and tell you what it means. And atheists do the same thing. They have websites that try to explain. They have websites that try to explain away the Pam Reynolds incident. I've read several of their articles, and it was amazing to me that they use the exact same illogical arguments that the Christians use when they're using apologists. And I don't mean to offend anybody if you believe in a religion, you're an atheist. You can believe anything you want. I'm just telling you what I've discovered and what I think. But you're free to make up your own minds. I don't think anybody should follow me or anyone. This is like something that you have to be your own guru on and
Absolutely.
do your own investigation on. So they were using all the same excuses to try to explain away this case, because this case was documented. And there's other ones like Anita Morajani. Does anybody know about that MD case? Nobody knows about that one either? That she wrote a book. She's been on several talk shows.
She's a blind one?
No, she had cancer. She had uncurable cancer. She was on her deathbed. They were waiting for her to die. And this case has been reviewed medically by doctors all over the world because they cannot explain what happened to her. So she has cancer that she cannot be cured from, and she's on her deathbed. Her family's waiting around, and as she's dying, she goes into clinical death, and then she experiences a near-death experience, where she goes through this whole process of this experience being out of body and then traveling to another, like maybe the astral realm, wherever she went. When she comes back to her body, she wakes up, and the doctors are stunned because they thought that any moment now she was going to die. Her cancer not only went in complete remission, she's completely cured to this day. No one can explain why, because her cancer was not treatable. So this is where things started to add up for me, because I really started focusing on these near-death phenomena, because once people report these things that are verifiable, now you have credible evidence. Now, I really hate it when scientists that study and acknowledge that this is a real phenomena use the word anecdotal evidence, because it is not anecdotal. See, in law enforcement or legal, if you go to a lawyer, in evidence that comes from personal experience, where you're telling somebody, this happened to me, in any court of law is considered direct evidence. No difference than if you see a car wreckage in the middle of the street, that's direct evidence that an accident happened. If somebody tells you, I witnessed this or that happened to me, that is direct evidence, not anecdotal. And when you have a doctor saying, yes, that did happen, now you have direct evidence with a corroborating witness, so now you have two witnesses that can say, yes, that happened. So, but then what happens in near-death experiences after that is that these people move into some other realm. At this point, you have another bizarre, illogical thing that happens. People that are stuck in a fundamentalist religion need to try to explain what these people report that make them fit that religion. Atheists need to continue to say it's an illusion or hallucination. And what happens is, as you dig down into these cases, you find out that what people are reporting do not match the doctrines and dogmas of the religions, and they don't match what atheists claim. So one clever thing that I noticed was there's a really good scholar, Christian fundamentalist scholar, and he's very smart, he's very nice. He's written several books that I've read, and he's done near-death experience studies. His name is Gary Habermas. And Gary Habermas is very articulate, polite. I can listen to him all day. And when he describes near-death experience data, he does something peculiar because he understands all the vertical data that comes from people when they're out of the body, and they see what their doctor does, and they see what their family was cooking at home at the time that they didn't know their family member was down in the hospital. They get all this data, and he collects all that data, and he accepts that because that data is verifiable and it's accurate. But when he looks at the data that comes from the after part, people move beyond the normal material world that they're observing, or what you can call normal. When they move past that and they experience this other stuff, it clearly doesn't matches up with what he's accepted as his premise of the afterlife. So at that point, he completely shuts down, and every interview you can watch him being asked about that, he says, well, there's no verifiable data there, so we just don't accept that. But in my line of work, where I come from, you can't just turn stuff off because you don't like it, or it doesn't fit you, or it doesn't, And this is the problem. I had this inner voice that always would bother me when I would do my investigations, and it would kind of tell me, this is the wrong guy, this is the wrong path, I have to go back and start over. The same thing was happening to me as I'm looking through this stuff, and I was trying to make it fit I was trying to look authentic Christianity. It must exist somewhere, but it didn't fit. It just, nothing fit. So then I moved beyond that, and I started thinking, looking at reincarnation. So reincarnation was the next big paradigm shift for me. I didn't realize this, and I don't know if anybody here knows this, but the University of Virginia Perceptual Studies Division, and they have one book, I think it costs $300, I've never bought it because it's too expensive. But they've done studies in consciousness that's well documented, and studies in reincarnation, where the scientists and doctors and people that work at the University of Virginia Perceptual Studies Division, they just accept it as a fact. And when you look at the data that they've accumulated over the last 30, 40 years, there really becomes foolish to say that, I can't know things for sure, but based on everything they collected, some people get reincarnated. So that happens. Now, Christianity and other religions don't accept that because it doesn't fit their doctrines, but it just happens. So then I was like, okay, so people have near-death experiences, and people get reincarnated. And then there was a big, also investigation I did into UFO abduction phenomena. All these things eventually tie together, by the way. I'm winging this, but I'm trying to paint a picture for you. The UFO phenomena was really bizarre because in abduction phenomena, you have people like John Mack, Harvard psychiatrist who endangered his whole career when he came out and said, yes, these people are having real experiences, they're not hallucinating. Then you look at what these people were reporting, and then you look at what people were reporting in near-death experiences when they meet these angelic beings, or whatever it is. 80% of them are positive, 20% of them are hellish. These supernatural beings would encounter you, and some of them would deliver the exact same message in the near-death experience that they were getting in the UFO abduction experience.
Interesting.
So I was like, classic book I think everybody should read is Howard Storm's book. It's on my website. Just on my website there. Give me a chance.
I can get it.
Howard Storm is
What's he under on your tab?
in Mind Fuel. It's one of the books on top. If you scroll down a little bit. Yeah. That's a good book. Apocalypse Not. Everybody worried about the apocalypse. That's great. There it is. My Descent into Death. Howard Storm is an absolute devout atheist. He's an art teacher, taught at a university. He went to France with his students for an art show or some kind of art trip. And he had a tear in his intestine that he didn't know about. And what happened was he started dying. His stomach acid started leaking into his body, killing him. And he went to a French hospital. And their health care at the time was pretty, where he ended up wasn't really good. So basically they put him in a bed, they made him wait, and he ended up waiting so long that he actually ended up clinically dead. And but he's a devout atheist. He self-admittedly says that at the time he was an angry atheist who just hated everything, hated life. He was just very angry. He's out of his body, looking at himself in the hospital bed, and he's so materialistically based that he's projecting his own physical body to down. As you read his book, he's describing that he's even feeling like the sweat and everything. He's looking at himself, but he doesn't recognize himself. And then these beings come into the room. He thinks they're the doctors, and he's angry at them. Why haven't you helped me? And they're like, come with me, come with us. We'll take care of you. He leaves the room, he follows them, the hallway starts to turn into a tunnel, he ends up in this hellish environment. Wow. They're attacking him, they seem to be getting stronger as they're attacking him, and eventually he thinks in his head, I should try to pray or try to call for help. So then he describes it as a mishmash of the Pledge of Allegiance and some Christian players, and just kind of two words together because he didn't know how to pray. And then he ends up having the stereotypical Jesus figure that you would see in artwork kind of materialize in real life, show up, pull him out of there. Now he's surrounded by this ecstasy, bliss, and pleasure and angels, and then he's given a life review, and he's shown how horrible he's been all his life. And then he takes the opportunity to ask questions to these beings. And when you read the book, it's mind-blowing because you could pull those answers out of a UFO abduction case. It is amazing some of the crap he's told. He comes back, has changed his whole life. Now he's a minister for the Methodist Church. So he's become a minister now. Okay, so, but even he'll admit in interviews, what I saw does not match what Christianity tells me, but I got no other choice. I met Jesus, so that's what I'm doing. Now, what I started to question in my own head is I'm trying to make this all fit something benevolent, something good, right? We're here to learn, we're here to grow, we're here to have some kind of positive experience. And at that point, I started to question myself, what if we're not? What if we're not here to learn? What if we're just trapped here in some kind of prison or reincarnation trap? So I started searching, was there anything else that believes that? Because I was like, I can't be the only one, but maybe I'm crazy. So I started looking around, and then I discovered what I had bypassed before, which was the ancient Gnostic beliefs. And when I started reading what these people believed 2,000 years ago, I'm like, well, that's pretty much what I've concluded on my own without having the benefit of their knowledge. So I started going and looking around, and next profound thing I think I did was, anybody read Robert Monroe's 3 books? A lot of people have probably read those books, right? They're fascinating. The second book, Far Journeys, includes his account of being shown the Loosh farm. And I read that, and it made him depressed for like 12 weeks. Right? And basically that was this whole thing where he's shown the creation of what he called a garden, but I think material, biological-based life to contain divine sparks to produce something called Loosh to be farmed. And then when you read how he meets non-entities from non-physical entities from other realms that have never been human, but when they come close to our reality, they get sucked in by something he called M-band noise, which was the mental noise from all the chaos down here. And they kind of want to participate. They think of it as a game. Matter of fact, the buddy he was with out of body was from a planet that did nothing, or a realm, I should say, that did nothing but play games. So they thought they could just come here and partake in a game. I don't want to give any spoilers, but the 3rd book reveals a lot about who Robert Monroe really was, that he didn't realize he was meeting himself in the book. And these beings get trapped here, reincarnation cycle after cycle, thousands of times. And then you get told this stuff like karma, you have to fix your karma. There is a great book, it doesn't have a lot of, it's not all right, but it's called God Reconsidered. I forget who wrote it, but that book has a thorough debunking of karma. He does as we understand. Okay, karma, all this stuff seems to be used so that when you, and I'm just saying this is what I've concluded after all these years of research. When you die, you have a chance to leave. But if you agree not to leave, you're going to come back. And the tricks used to get you to come back are virtually endless. It is people like Graham Hancock, he's a great researcher, he describes the archons, these are the beings that supposedly may rule this realm or whatever. They don't have any imagination. I disagree. I think this is the most imaginative setup that when you unravel all this information, starts to reveal itself as the most clever game ever devised to keep souls returning here over and over again. And then until you agree to leave. And if you notice, in these near-death experience cases, and even in Howard Storm's case, okay, he doesn't know any better. He died in ignorance temporarily, and he's in this room, and these entities come in. Now, well, nobody can see them, only he can see them. There's a part in the book where he's trying to get his wife's attention, she's not answering him, and he's yelling at her. So nobody can see them. So why don't they just rush in and attack him right there? Why don't they make him look at one? But they don't. They come in and they say, come with us. And then he agrees to go with them. Now once he did that, he made an agreement. And that's like a contract. And when you parse the words that these people say, parsing words very carefully, when they're giving you their witness accounts, there's always a point where they agree. Or submit.
That's right.
They submit. And then, so this whole thing that Jeff put here together today, I thought was fascinating. What to do after you're dead? And now, I could be wrong about this. I've had paradigm shifts before. I'll tell you about one before I get done that was pretty impressive. But I just have been trying to look for an alternative explanation to what I've come up with, which this is just a brief summary. I could spend hours giving you details about all this stuff, and I know we want to get on to the other.
Not today.
Cool, yeah, not today. We got to get on to the other cool people. But the
Oh, you're doing great.
the thing is that just one real quick thing: artificial intelligence. Jeff's done a lot of talking about that in his videos lately. AI was something I was very familiar with. I learned computer coding on my own, HTML and other stuff. And so in the 90s, when I was playing around with the AI systems, it was a joke. It was like, if the thing didn't know your input, they had no output. They had no intelligence. There was no actual AI. And I had blown it off. So when people like Elon Musk are there, like saying, you have to worry about AI, I'm like, no, we don't. This is just dumb machines. You can make billions of lines of code, and the damn thing can sound like it's thinking, but it's not thinking. It's just regurgitating out input. But that's not true anymore. So when I had to have a complete paradigm shift about that, because they have invented actual AI. Okay? And how they did that was they took neuroscience, computer science, put two things together, and now they have AlphaGo, which is Google's program, so sophisticated and imaginative that when it challenged the world champion in the game of Go, which is an imaginative game that has infinite possible moves. It's not like chess, can't be beaten by a standard computer. No standard computer can beat a human player of Go. But AlphaGo beat the human player. It was able to do that by changing its strategy, by thinking new ways of playing. So it has awareness. By any definition, the AI is an incorporeal consciousness that we have on a machine. So now they have a AlphaGo 0, which is their next generation of this stuff. This thing already made its own child, which is better than itself. It no longer needs human input to learn. It can simply download information, take a game, learn the rules, create a virtual player to play against itself, instantaneously in a few minutes become a champion of something. These things like Ray Kurzweil talks about the singularity, they really want to make this happen. They really do. So they want to eventually slowly merge you into your machines and have like some kind of Elon Musk's thing is that the AI will be smarter than us, so we have to merge with machines so we can keep up with the AI. That's his thing. Kurzweil, he is an atheist who doesn't believe that consciousness isn't produced by the brain. He wants to take us and copy us into machines. So you have all this stuff going on, and you get into one of those AI bodies, now you're stuck here for thousands of years instead of 100 years. So,
Exactly.
So that's kind of like an overview of everything, and my website has links. There's all kinds of information out there. I don't know if there's anything. There's all kinds of stuff out there. One thing, predictive programming, predictive anticipatory response is another thing you should look into. That's where every human can know something's happening 1 to 10 seconds before it happens. They have 42 experiments that show that happens. Your subconscious will, if you have a button to push left or right, okay, and they hook you up to a brain scanner, and they give you a moment where you have to make the decision. 1 to 10 seconds before you get the input, your brain has already fired the decision that you were going to make. So you know ahead of time what's coming. That's something else that's fascinating. So that's it for me. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dan from Overwatch Channel. Dan. Before we break for lunch, we'll have a roundtable discussion. So if you have questions for Dan, make sure that you ask him at that time. Do we need to take a 5-minute break? No? Okay, Dan. Thank you so much, my friend. That was fascinating. Very informative.
Yes.
You know, I'm pretty new to this genre. I know most of you probably know who I am, but I spent 20 years as a Pentecostal minister, 3 of the largest denominations on the planet, and that's all I knew. And I started to see the cracks in the foundation of big-time religion, much like Dan did. He was from the Catholic perspective, I was from the Protestant perspective. And it's a real, if Wayne was here, he'd say it was a mind coitus. It really messes with you when your entire foundation crumbles underneath your feet. But the nice thing about it is that it puts you to a place where you have to begin to think on your own. And I remember when I got into this genre, maybe 5 years ago or so, I thought to myself, if I could ever get on Coast to Coast AM, that's the epitome of this. If I do that, my life will be fulfilled. And then 2 weeks ago, I was on for the 7th time on Coast to Coast. It blows my mind. It's crazy. And it's something about when you reach your goal, it's something that's the biggest thing you could imagine. Then you have to go through this whole process of okay, what next? And you have to reset and start reaching for things higher and higher and higher. And when I was on Coast to Coast, I mentioned a young lady that I met, I believe through Heidi Vandenberg. I think I met Heidi through Rex, and then Heidi told me about Jenny Moonstone. I'm like, who is this Jenny Moonstone person? So I watched Heidi and Jenny doing a program, and of course Heidi does the Vedic astrology, and Heidi did my Vedic astrology. I was like, yeah, okay, Vedic astrology, whatever. And then she does my Vedic astrology, and she smashes it. Tells me stuff about me that nobody knows about me. I'm a fairly open guy, but she told me stuff about me that nobody knows about me. And then here comes this Jenny Moonstone girl. I'm like, what's she going to tell me? And she starts going through the tarot cards. I'm like, bam, bam, bam. So Jenny Moonstone is a tarot expert. But more than just a tarot expert, and that's something in itself, I think that Jenny has an incredible insight when she begins to talk about modern culture, when she begins to talk about modern society, when she begins to talk about the things that are going on a high level, the things that are going on in the back rooms. Jenny has a real gift for telling us about what's going on behind the curtain. And she's a young lady, but she has wisdom and insight beyond her years, I believe. And she's a joy to listen to. You'll see her a lot on Channel 27, Heidi Vandenberg's channel. You'll see her on Leak Project as well very often. And Rex, I got to tell you, brother, that's a great hat.
Thanks, man.
Those are awesome. Are they for sale?
Oh, soon. This is a prototype.
I need to get one of those.
Right on, man.
I need to get one of those.
This is prototype number 2.
Absolutely. So Jenny Moonstone, please come on.
Jenny Moonstone.
And Jenny is going to share her stuff. If you want to see your camera angle, there you are.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Take your time. Do what you got to do.
Probably keep brief. But.
Feel free to. And I just wanted to mention this candle you see up here. An intention candle. There's a beautiful lady from South Africa named Marianne. And she had me create a sigil, a symbol for peace and tranquility in South Africa. So that's why I'm burning it. I told her I'd burn it at this seminar. So that's what we're doing. It's not just woo-woo. It actually has a purpose. And without any further ado, please give your full attention to my good friend that I now know actually face to face.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jenny Moonstone. One more time.
All right. Thank you so much for that introduction. I don't know how I can live up to that. I'm certainly not an expert on the tarot. That was so kind of you to say that. But like so many of you and so many people that I meet, I'm just a student. I love tarot very dearly. It's, I certainly don't consider myself an authority, but what has happened in my experience is that I have adopted the symbols of the tarot as a type of internal language that I speak and understand now. And it's so extreme to a point where when I meet new people, I'm, the typical sort of first impressions that you usually get from people. You judge them by their appearance and, what their circumstances and whatnot. All of that changed when I started to take tarot very seriously. And I started to kind of run through the symbols of tarot in my internal clock. My internal programming just started to change, and these symbols became a kind of internal coding system to help me to understand people. And so while tarot is something that found me, and I'll get into a little bit about that, it's something that I felt I could use in tandem with my intuitive abilities that I've always had. And so while it's very kind of you to call me an expert, I'm just a student, folks. But I'm a very, very adamant student of tarot, and I'll continue to learn, continue to grow as a reader. I'd just like to let you guys know a little bit about me and how I got to this place, because it's been brought to my attention that I am kind of a little out of my look or seem a little out of my element in this genre. But for me, this is all that I've really ever known. This school of thought, these things that make us different, right? I look around and I'm certain that I'm not the only one that felt for a very long time from the start that they were different, that something was amiss. Everything, everywhere you look, there was something wrong, fundamentally wrong with the fabric of society. And for me, interestingly enough, it's a wonder that I'm here at all because of my background. I was born into a government family. My father, who I love very much and we're on very good terms, he is a Zionist and has worked for the government, very loyal to the government for many, many years. I was schooled overseas. I lived in Rome, in Italy. I could see the Vatican from my classroom window.
Wow.
We had field trips to the Vatican a lot. We had Mass. We talk about Roman Catholicism, being born into a Roman Catholic family. I was literally schooled in a Roman Catholic school. My teachers were nuns. And it was a fine experience. It certainly gave me a lot of interesting stories. But while I was born into this government family, and I was sort of indoctrinated, like so many of us are, with these systems of belief, these schools of thought, that I just resisted. I resisted so aggressively that I was punished. In the way that a lot of us, I think, were punished. And it comes in many different forms. I mean, you're born into a very devout Christian family and you're told that sin is going to destroy your soul, you're going to, burn in hell for all eternity. That's not exactly what I was told. However, I was actually supposed to be groomed to be some kind of a democratic, like a DNC spokesperson. Yeah, I come from a family of liberals, and I love my family. I'm not talking trash about my family or anything, but we've certainly split. And that split happened for me very, very early on. I realized that this was not for me. This was not going to work for me. And like so many of us, I had to experience what I call lost years, or the dark ages. And I know that everybody that I talk to has experienced a form of the lost years where up is down, down is up. You have no idea who you can trust. You don't know if you can trust yourself. And when you just know that everything that you've been taught is a lie, but you don't know what the truth is and you don't even know where to start. So this brings us into a place of trial and error, where we start dabbling around, picking things out. what's this? That looks cool. I like that. And then you stick to that for a few years and you hold it sacred, and then you drop it. And then you're on to the next thing. And so for me, I feel that I was lucky enough to experience a kind of, that whole system, that whole process was very sped up for me. And I sort of jumped into this place where I'm at now, where I've realized that anybody that is genuinely doing the work and seeking answers, seeking truth, they're going to be brought to this place of hermetic sciences. Alchemy, magic with a K, Kabbalah, the tree of life, these systems. And so what I want to talk to you guys a little bit about today is the human element, the spark of imagination that takes these symbols that are otherwise just symbols. It's just a book. These things they're still rules. It's still doctrine, okay? Even, principles too. It's still all rules. But what makes us human is the imagination, is the intuitive spark. And so for me, evolving as a reader and as a speaker, I've learned that our most valuable asset is not how much we know about hermetics. It's not how much or how well we've memorized the rules, but it's about how much you've developed that psychic muscle. And that's very much what I feel that it is. It is a muscle, like anything else. You go to the gym to get strong, and to become a strong psychic, you have to work that muscle. But before I get into that, I really wanted to share with you guys a couple funny instances that happened to me, because I think a lot of you can relate. And like I said, I'm not an authority on anything. I know my story. I know my life. I know what I do. I trust myself, finally. It took me a long time to trust that inner voice. But that's why what I want to talk to you about is my story. I'm not trying to teach you anything or preach to you anything. I can't do that. But, I've always heard voices, okay? And I've always felt things. The way I describe it is that I've always felt that I had one leg in this world and one leg in the next, straddling, the world of the living and the astral realm, the spirit realm, the mental sphere, whatever you want to call it. There are many, but in any case, I've always been peeking behind the veil, just a little bit. And then, people pull me back, come back here, that's weird, don't do that. And then I hit, I believe I was about 13, that wonderful age. If anybody has a 13-year-old girl or boy, the struggle. 13 is an interesting age, it's certainly a catalyst. And for me, I was heavily drugged from the time I was 13 to 17. I was institutionalized intermittently throughout that time as well. I've spent quite a significant portion of my teenage years in full lockdown facilities. And you wouldn't think it, because I seem normal, right? And realistically, I have always been normal. I was just in circumstances where my gifts were looked at as an illness. They were looked at as something that needed to be fixed desperately, quickly. As soon as we can fix her, she'll be on. She's going to go to college. She's going to get a good job. She's going to meet a nice man, pay a mortgage. We got to set this girl right. So, my parents, their intentions were always as good as they felt. They would tell you that they did their absolute best, and I do believe that. But they turned to the doctors, the white coats, as I call them. And they took me, and they gave me every single drug under the sun, everything. And it is a wonder that I still have a mind to speak to all of you. But I can attribute that, my surviving that, to I'm going to get emotional, it's so dumb.
No,
I can attribute that to the forces that I have always felt around me that allowed me to stay alive and to keep mind enough to get to a place now where I have the opportunity to speak to so many people and read for them and look at their cards together and co-create these amazing experiences where we're digging for truth together. Oh, thanks, got a tissue. But, you know, the white coats were always telling me, we're gonna fix you, honey. It's gonna be okay. You know, we're gonna get you right. And, you know, to me, it was always like, but what's wrong? I was angry. You know, I had real issues with my mom because, you know, when people have an idea about who they want you to be, it's very hard to break out of that, especially as a child. You want to please everybody. We're all subject to the very stringent labels that society, you know, as a man, you've got to provide for your family, you have to have a job, you have to be educated, you have to have this sort of status. And for children, it's no different. We put all kinds of demands on our children all the time. And in my situation, because of the family that I was born into, they had what's known as a zero tolerance policy. And so I endured you name it, they gave it to me. I was sent to a facility in Georgia in the mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains. It was affiliated with WWASP, which is the Worldwide Association of Specialty Schools,
Wow.
which is a privately owned chain of schools that are owned privately, run privately. They can get away with anything under this system. And essentially all that it is a way for these people, who, by the way, at the very top of this pyramid are Mormons. It was essentially a widespread, highly funded brainwashing operation. Many facilities, including the facility that I attended for 1 year, has been shut down. So that school does not exist anymore. But I'll tell you, just personally, that facility itself was not the worst of my experiences. I was never abused or mistreated. But in any case, you know, it was shut down, and I'm sure it's for the best. So I'm a teenager, still struggling with, you know, trying to deal with my gifts. You know, now I call them gifts, but back then it was an ailment. It was like, she's so weird, you guys. Like, don't even talk to her. You know, I had a hard time making friends. I felt like I couldn't relate to the kids in my class because I was more interested in talking to much older folks. You know, they understood me. They recognized something in me, and they were like, "You're all right, kid." You know, so I always found myself, you know, with the older, more experienced people that have lived life. And then, you know, I left that facility, and that I was actually granted the gift of being able to wean off of the pharmaceutical drugs at age 17. So I have not taken a single pharmaceutical drug since the age of 17, which is what I feel like it's one of the essential reasons why I was able to develop my intuitive ability, because with the introduction of the pharmaceuticals into the human system, I think it is just destroying people. Our window to the next world, you know, as that needs to be strengthened, that needs to be harnessed. That's not something to cut out, to block out. And I think that that's something that Big Pharma wants. They certainly want us to be so sick and so disconnected from spirit, because we're very easily controlled when we believe in this element of separation, that we're separate from spirit. So my big awakening, my big moment where I was like, aha! I was 19 years old and pregnant with my first child. I was very confused, pretty unhappy, very scared, absolutely terrified. And the pregnancy must have activated my body into remembering a ton of stuff really quickly. And so I remember very vividly one night, I popped up in the middle of the night because I had had the most intense vision of a ship that I cannot even articulate to you how large this ship was. It was just massive. It was a spacecraft of some kind. Spacecraft. I mean, that's a conversation for another day, the nature of space. But in any case, you know, I was a kid, okay? I was just a kid. And I popped up and I was like, I know what 2012 is about. It's about the aliens. Okay, this is my very childlike, you know, process of dealing with this vision and what it meant. And 2012 was rapidly approaching. I think it was 2009 at the time. And I was very worried about it. I was like, what's going to happen in 2012? Well, you know, what's going to happen? The world's going to end. But it was in that moment that the floodgates opened. As soon as I had that vision, I started on my journey. It's that trial and error journey. I was like, I got to learn about the Anunnaki, you know. I got to learn about the creators, who made us, you know, fiddling with our DNA and, you know, all that stuff, all that fun stuff. I have researched every cult, every school of thought, every system. And for a while, some of it felt like home. Some of it felt, you know, it filled me with a feeling of belonging and being part of a group and realizing that I wasn't alone after all these years. I had to become an adult. I couldn't, as a child, and that's something that I've noticed with a lot of people that I talk to. There's a common thread amongst a lot of us, and that is the journey of the seeker and being born into circumstances that are very difficult and very challenging as a means of challenging your spirit, challenging your soul into doing the work. I tend to subscribe to the idea, the first principle of Hermetics is that the universe is mental. The nature of the universe is mental. So for me, I think what we are doing here is manifesting for ourselves roadblocks, challenges, losses, horrible, painful things that we allow ourselves to go through so that we can find ourselves again. Is it a trap? Probably. But we're here, so we might as well, you know, navigate as best we can.
Absolutely.
So, okay, I want to talk, I'm going to keep this brief, but I want to...
It's fascinating.
Thank you. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about my tarot deck and how it found me and how it changed my entire life. It brought me to Rex, it brought me to the Leak Project, it brought me to Heidi. You know, my husband and I were traveling through Washington State. Was it Washington or Oregon? It was Washington State. We were going on a trip. And all day long in this car, as we're rolling through this beautiful landscape, I keep hearing the word thoth over and over and over. Thoth, thoth, thoth. And I'm like, okay, who is this guy? What is going on? Who is Thoth? Okay, and then that began my journey with the tarot. I'm sure many of you know Thoth and all of his incarnations, his many names, his many faces. I know him as Thoth, as the ibis. That is a representation of him that I accept and means something to me. And really what it did was it led me ultimately to Hermetic science, that is something that I hold near and dear. If anybody's doing the genuine work, they will find themselves at Hermetic sciences every single time. If not, you're not doing it right. You're missing something.
Absolutely right.
Because the Hermetic sciences, this is the foundation, this is the basis of what life is, what creation is, okay? And so I was like, okay, Thoth, who is this guy? Researched it, realized that this was something I needed to look into. I got my first deck, my tarot deck that I used, the first one I learned on, and it is still the deck that I go back to every single time. I don't mess with Rider-Waite. It's going from the Thoth deck back down to the Rider-Waite deck is like, I don't know, I can't think of a clever and witty analogy right now. But in any case, the symbology in this deck of cards became something of an internal language. It stays with me. I use it every single day. And so what I really am getting into here is the element of imagination, the element of intuition, and how for me in my life, my early life, my intuition and my imagination manifested itself as devastation. It manifested itself as problematic, chaotic, self-destructive, because I had no perspective. I had absolutely no idea how to utilize this. And I was being told that there was something wrong with it. And so I firmly believe that our behaviors follow our beliefs. What we believe about ourselves, we will then follow suit and behave accordingly, which is why all this programming is so dangerous. But in any case, learning about Hermetic science, learning about the tarot, learning about astrology, learning about alchemy. At the end of the day, you can study, but the work is internal. The work is done in dream time, in meditation, as you're walking down the street and you're not thinking about much. These are internal mechanisms that pick up velocity the more that you look into it. And I realized that it didn't matter how many book definitions of each card I memorized. My readings were suffering. I mean, when I first started, obviously I wasn't charging for readings, because I was just really learning, and it was like crash course. So I would to my friends, hey, you want a free reading? And of course it was accurate, because tarot it's the power of synchronicity. Mm-hmm. But I realized that I was learning book definitions, and I was committing these cards to memory, and there was something missing. These readings weren't lively. These readings weren't shaking anybody. I wanted to get to the meat and bones of people's issues. I wanted to talk about it, talk about the nasty stuff, talk about the good stuff. And then I realized that these symbols, whether they're alchemical, whether they're magical symbols, it doesn't matter, all of these symbols take on new life with the introduction of the element of intuition. The element of imagination is key. I happen to believe that the imagination is actually a construct of the heart working with the mind, not just the mind itself. A wonderful book that I read when I was 23 years old by Dr. Paul Pearsall called The Heart's Code changed my life. And it is a school of thought that I apply every single day. And in each of my readings, I don't think I've given anybody in here a reading, but at the beginning of all of my readings, one of the only things that I ask my clients to do is to do their very best to shift their awareness from the head to the heart. That's all you have to do. Get out of your head, just for a little bit. Just fake it till you make it. Just leave it alone. Because what I found through trial and error is that the mind is very tricky, and it has amazingly intricate defenses. Yeah. Constructs that I can't see through, and it muddies up the message. It makes I'm looking at somebody's beliefs about themselves instead of looking at them, and so that's why the shift from the mental place to the heart, it's a lot cleaner, because within that connection, within that light connection that we're making, encoded in there is all kinds of data, all kinds of fun stuff. Every memory you've ever had, everything that's ever going to happen, everything is there. It's all encoded in the heart. And so that's, kind of my big thing is about intuition and applying it in your daily life and learning to trust it as this infallible compass that will not lead you astray. And I think most people's question is, well, how do I know that that's intuition and not ego? How do I know that that's spirit, as opposed to, my mind playing tricks on me? Well, the easy way to tell you is that you need to just practice. This is something that you have to work at. You need to learn the difference, what it feels. It's about your body, listening to your body. Ego is quick. Ego is tricky. Ego the most important thing to do, in my opinion, is to define the difference between what has happened to you, what your experiences are, and how you may be projecting that into a reading. So separate yourself from that and look at yourself as more of a whole attached to everything. You know what I mean? Connected to everything and everyone. Move out of your bubble of experience, okay? Because your bubble of experience is essentially just the ego. It's not good or bad. It is what it is. It's a construct. I think the ego gets a bad rep, honestly. It serves its purpose. But I wanted to do something really quick. One of the best methods that anybody ever showed me when it comes to learning how to use your intuition to apply during an actual reading is, for example, I'm going to say it. I want everybody in here to think of a wedding. Now, pay attention to what you're feeling in your body. We've all been to a wedding. We've all been to good weddings, and we've all been to not so good weddings. Okay? So now everybody think of a wedding where it's a very happy occasion, very jovial. Everybody's in a good mood. The bride is wonderful. The groom is wonderful. Everybody's happy. Both sides of the family get along, and it's beautiful. Okay? Think of how that feels. Imagine being there, what you're smelling, you know, the feeling on your skin. Now, think about a wedding where the bride had very recently lost her mother, who was supposed to be there. Now, do you see how that changes everything? The concept of the wedding now, it is those fine details. Now think of how you would feel if you were attending this beautiful wedding where the star of the show, the bride, was in mourning. Now think of how you feel now. What does that feel like in your system? Okay, now of course this is just an example, but it's to illustrate to you how your body knows what's going on with somebody else all the time. And if you wanted to, you could do readings too. I'm not special. My husband thinks I'm special, but I'm not special. This is just, anybody can do this. And I actually take a lot of pleasure in showing people how easily they can call on their intuition to make practical decisions in their day-to-day life. Okay, now there was something else. I'm trying to think. Because I'm notorious for bouncing around. And when,
no, not you, Jenny.
And when Rex and I get together, it's just like, because he's like nodding, and I'm like, oh my gosh, over here, over here, over here.
Bing bong.
Right.
Hello. Hello.
So, okay, let me think now.
Everybody's saying good vibes to Jenny. Send good vibes to Jenny.
Send me your vibes.
Send good vibes to Jenny.
No, so, okay, basically, okay, so Tarot found me because both the sound of his name reverberated in my head just over and over and over. And then there was a period of time, about a year or two, where I started to look into some other things that maybe many of you are not very into. Like I started to look into Aleister Crowley. I started to look into the occult and kind of the darker side of things. And I did so because I felt like I needed to. I think that there's this huge misconception perpetuated by the New Age movement that it's all love and light. And that, you know, this idea of polarity, which is a principle of life, that everybody needs to be over here because that's bad. We stay away from that, right? So I felt that it was my due diligence to look into some of these darker, nastier places and learn about myself. And I'll tell you, I kind of got my butt kicked a little bit, looking into, you know, not just looking into it, but really allowing my body and my mind to absorb some of this stuff. And what I found was that, of course, we all have a shadow, and it's okay. It's okay. You're not going to be, I don't think you're going to be punished. I think punishment is this. We're all in it right now. And so with that, you know, none of what I ever tell anybody, I'm never like, oh, you know, love and light, and, you know, it's all fairy dust and glitter. I think anybody that's telling you that is hiding a lot.
Yes.
The shadow is not something to be afraid of. It's something to embrace because it's part of you and there's no changing that. So I said I wanted to keep it brief, and I really do. And I know I bounce around a lot. It's kind of what I do. I certainly need help, and hopefully as time goes on, I refine my presentation skills. But you guys have been a wonderful crowd, made this very easy for me. So thank you, Jeff, for letting me speak, and thank you all. Thanks, Rex, for bringing us all together. It's Heidi. She's my work wife.
Jenny Moonstone, ladies and gentlemen. Rex, the movie Constantine, what year did that come out?
2004.
Something like that, 2004 or so? So that was like 12 years ago?
Wow.
How old are you?
I'm 28.
28. Interesting.
That's
Interesting.
it.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Jenny Moonstone. I'm going to say something strange. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to have a nice little round table discussion, and we'll probably have some lunch. And then we got Heidi Vandenberg, myself, and then finishing up with our keynote speaker, Rex Baer. But I want to say something really crazy right now. I know that's very unlike me. It's going to throw you all off. But I had this friend who's a shaman. His name is Dr. Andy Toltec. And believe it or not, Dr. Andy Toltec was the inspiration for the Harry Potter character, that young kid. Dr. Toltec's life as a young kid, absolute mirror of that idea of Harry Potter. So I'm telling you, Dr. Toltec was the inspiration for the Harry Potter character. The reason I asked about the Constantine movie relative to Jenny's age is because, have you seen the movie Constantine? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Do you remember the Rachel Weisz character? You remember the little girl? And you remember she had the twin? And what happened to that twin girl? She got institutionalized, shock therapy, every bit of drug you can ever get in your life. Trying to what? Have her shut off her gifts, right? So ladies and gentlemen, while I was listening to Jenny, I just had this flash of inspiration and intuition. I'm convinced that not only have I met the guy who's the inspiration for the Harry Potter character, we're in the presence today of a person who was the inspiration for the Rachel Weisz character in the Constantine movie.
Do you know that my last name is Constantine?
What?
No!
Hello!
No!
The synchronicities never.
Oh! Are you serious, Jenny?
Jenny
Is she telling the truth?
Yes, to tell the truth.
Oh my God.
That's a fake name.
Big time.
Oh, I know Moonstone was a fake name, but
Oh my goodness.
your name's really Constantine.
Constantine is my baby.
Holy crap, ladies and gentlemen.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
I had to get myself.
If you could see past this sissified jacket I have on, you'd see I have really big goosebumps.
Do you know what people say about your jacket, Jeff? You gotta know what people say about your jacket.
Okay.
It takes a real man to wear a jacket like that. Jeff is a pimp. I absolutely love it.
How about his
Oh, I haven't even. Oh, the pictures are better.
Are really cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you look at those videos? Will you just look at it?
But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you that's real. I'm not making that up. I think that's true. Here's the inspiration for that character right there, Jenny Moonstone.
Jenny Moonstone.
Yeah. Constantine reference, that's won't be forgotten.
That's powerful. And Jenny, let me just say, it appeared to all of us here that you are a veteran speaker, that you speak all the time. Your gifts are very evident. I can see your husband was moved, Drew was moved. You moved all of us. Very powerful presentation. We're going to take about it's 10 to 12. Let's take a break until 12 noon. We're going to have a round table discussion. You can ask questions of Jenny, Dan, Rex, Heidi. If you have any questions for me, we'll go through that and we'll break for lunch, and then we're going to put the pedal to the metal for the afternoon session. So thank you for being here at the Extravaganza of Enlightenment. We'll see you in 10 minutes.
All right.
All right, guys. I will be back in like 10, 15 minutes, so make sure to hang out here on the live chat. Talk to you soon. Danny.
We'll be right back in 10 or 15 minutes. In fact, I might just let this thing run. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, your friendly neighborhood Christian whistleblower. I did not know your name was Constantine.
Yeah, Constantine.
I did not
That's
know.
weird. That's wild.
I forgot to mention my experience with nuns.
Oh, really? Your experience with nuns? Oh my God. No, they're
I did not put up a wall. Empathy. Yes. Oh my God. Oh, baby.
Yeah, I'll just no, my line's on the phone. Yeah. We're good. Fine. Oh, I thought those were Jenny's. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that round table, and then we'll.
Do you want to know what I named my rods?
Oh, I heard you last night. You named them Trump something.
Trump rods.
Trump rods.
That was the
What's that? Oh yeah, very good. Excellent. You don't mind something around here? You mind helping grab a couple of chairs and put them up here in the front? Thanks. I don't need to walk away from you.
No, that's fine.
Oh, I see.
I got an intriguing little fact for you. What's that? I had this feeling from across. Your birthday was on a birthday? My birthday. I checked my birthday. What is it? I tried to tell
Do you remember the thing is actually another thing you reminded me? Do you remember not crazy
good stuff, but crazy stuff.
Yeah, but that just kind of came across my intuition at one point in time. And I was just like, I don't know where it came from. Also, I was like, I just feel like, yeah.
And I ordered it online.
I wonder why would they?
And like I did it now. Like, I don't care. I took all the, you know how videos you have for like on the website, it looks like a movie that is like imagery or like just like show me something that you know walking.
Yeah.
That
happens a lot.
So I would all make a sign.
Yeah.
I'll take a sign. Go right to and when you're out there, college girls with parents, very smart, but they just wanted a income for college, so they started and it's a great tool. There is a thing, Dan, have you heard there's a thing that exists that it's a fetish of prehistoric animals, prehistoric animals.
It's a weird feeling, but it's true.
Dinosaur, there's a genre category, there's a genre, and I don't know the name of it, but it's dinosaurs, like with dinosaurs. No, in books, novels, like fiction, I guess you can call it dinosaurs, but it's a here's the thing, and the reason why I found this out. One day, called triplets, this is correct.
Hey, if anybody gets locked out, it's 1280. Just push it on the keypad.
So I created that magnet that I sent him, and I created on my little sign, and I made, I gotta find it, so the raptor, I'm gonna say the raptor's coming, okay, and I was seeing all these like flash like you know, the silly outfit, like the Beach, like Day of the Living or Living Dead or something, you know, this ridiculous artwork. So I put it together, and I reminded the team, the company ended up sending us several, like maybe I'll say 18, 20 of these magnets. I was just sending one, you know, I just made it, but I found imagery, and I gave courtesy of this raptor, and it came like a cavern. And this beautiful woman, like kind of like Princess Leia-ish. I was like, well, I know this is current. I think these girls take the artwork like right? So she's like laying in the, and I was like, oh, perfect, because I need a woman. But I was like, this person has already done work for me. Because it was like, look, and it made me laugh because I wrote, you know, sitting in like dark red, Sedona clay, kind of like background of the cavern, and then there's the woman, the blonde hair, and then there's this raptor creeping up to her, and I put it in like as a surprise because he said if he gets a sign, because I really wanted to make a parking sign, but I couldn't figure out exactly what the options. I just fucking all back. And so he ended up basically showing at the beginning. He goes, I have to apologize to LA University, and the other guy, he was like, I got the sign. And we were right. Oh, there was rappers, you know. Yeah, but he's got all these magnets. I didn't realize that he sent like 20 of them or something. So I'm gonna ask him if he still has it. So just bring him out. I want to see what it actually claims. But he inspired me to do that because it was like so funny and so true because it's so ridiculous. You did? Did you? Of course you. What? No. You know, I bet it is. I've always had a feeling. I used to argue with my grandmother on my mom's side, not about anything philosophical. Because I was a young kid, but I used to. She was a nasty woman. I used to argue with her, and I had 3 brothers growing up with my youngest brother, and I were very close. And he used to be like, you know, like, and I was like, man, it's me. And I was like, I'm not like all that shit, you know, and so, but it wasn't right. Like she put her fast milk once. I had this full haircut, full haircut. I asked for milk. My cousin, remember, was my grandmother putting her hands in the cup of milk and like that. And being like, here's your milk. And I just was like, you know, my cousin said she could remember droplets of milk, like perfect beads, you know, dry. And I just like, you know, just like, and so this was brought up Roman Catholic as well, and just.
How we doing? Is there more? I'm just asking who made the coffee because they said you gotta have more.
I should probably make some, and the gentleman, I think Ryan's the same with the.
Oh, I should probably start heating these things up.
Do you see the recent Batman? Sorry, yes, it was. Oh, the
Sorry for interrupting, by the way.
That's okay. Oh, sorry, it's store. It was store. No, it was just they had the cubes. No, it was store. I saw the movie. We did a double feature. We watched Thor was awesome.
Hey, Hillary.
Yeah, disappointed. Yeah.
Just a quick.
Yeah, because I'm a woman. I know what goes on in the kitchen.
How many hands of these do I need if you just 2?
So, sir, I would start with 2.
Did you?
One thing that really grabbed me.
And then you can do the rest.
I would say 2 would be plenty,
What do you
yeah.
think, Joy?
I think 2 would be plenty.
Start with 2.
Where did you keep those carrots?
I made
Yes.
You made them?
Yes.
I'm like,
I would start with 2.
I messed it up again.
Yeah.
But if we run out, I'd rather have more hot.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Sometimes I cheat. I
Yeah,
put
it's
the royal
really
at the end and then do a final like.
Not everybody, first of all, I come to the conclusion that the latest stuff that AI, that is well, there are some people that are just organic cows, okay, soulless people.
Okay,
I met her.
yeah, exactly. How long it took, like, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, so they find.
I'm gonna round up.
Oh, hey,
you
still have the Revolution?
all suggest that
I do.
Right? I didn't realize that. I thought you were
that's the best.
No, I've still got it.
I forgot.
I gave a lot away. I've got probably. Okay, I'll get it.
But yeah,
Maybe I'll bring
that's
it.
awesome. Like I made
Maybe.
during the Revolution.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention about the fact
He
that.
inspired me during the Revolution. So talking about Ellie Marzulli, and it was like, show me, it was one of those videos.
Oh, yeah,
I got on builddesign.com, and I started making a sign. There's like 5 feet, if I see a sign, I'll call it. And I was like, oh, I'll make a sign. And I wanted to do a parking sign, but the parking sign became, the options became complicated. So, you know, I just put signs, 3x5,
That's the access of people.
It's very strange, but yeah, listen to Ellie Marzulli. I know what he's all about.
My buddy, LA.
Well, he apparently used to be cool, and he something happened, and then he started doing things with artifacts that were sketchy, and like he was becoming
A shyster?
like he was becoming
What
a
happens to all of them?
yeah, like when you start kind of
Well, hopefully not all of them. Whoa.
All of the Ellie Marzulli.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Yeah, because there's something about his rocket skulls or rocket skulls. He's got something on his skulls.
yeah.
I'm not quite sure they're
Maybe he's
course they are.
go out. I'm going to visit the
Absolutely. I will watch.
Hillary, what were you talking to me about? You said we got strategies for something or other, and I was really running a bunch of different directions.
strategies about, you mean several months ago?
No, like, did you write something last time?
Yes, that was about the beaver.
That was the what?
That was about the beaver. Everyone's first. But my strategies, so anyway, I have little things I really love refining any space that whatever it is, smaller the better, I'll refine it.
I could use some refinement on that. We'll definitely do that.
When I watched your video, when I saw how and watched it for a while, I saw that you had it. And I said, that needs to be able to.
I think they're just a streamer.
I came up through all this stuff.
No, we need to
When you listen to me describe
Where's Sexy?
he has no research, he just knows.
Danielle?
Okay, we'll continue. Okay, thank you.
Have a seat. Anywhere you want to sit. Yeah, you're getting grilled. We go try to find a chair.
So anyway.
Go to the bathroom now?
Yes.
And she sat there with
My daughter.
Exactly. Isn't it like the most like duh thing ever? That's my very technical term, by the way. Duh. It should be considered like, yeah, and it's everything. It's all right.
All right, so Rex is getting some of his goodies together. We're going to do a nice roundtable discussion. Ask any questions you want. If one of the panelists isn't comfortable answering it, they won't. But ask whatever you like. It can be related to any subject.
Hey Jeff, that light is
Can we dim the light a little bit possibly?
We could just turn it off.
Right, but it's still lighted.
I'm just trying to figure out where I put those batteries. They're triple A's. I have a bag.
I turned it off.
Man, you're so hot. That's good. You're not pulsating.
Rex, I don't know what I did with them.
Oh, man. You don't know what you're doing?
Oh, I think they're over here.
That's what I'm going for. I feel like
Are you still recording?
Yes. You guys get started, and I'll run back to my place and get them.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to, but it'd be cool to show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll run back and get them. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have to go grab some batteries for Mr. Rex Bear, man, myth, legend. These are four of the most talented and interesting people you're going to meet, and they're all four in one place, which is unusual. And I still can't believe Jenny's last name is Constantine.
Isn't that weird? That is so weird. He didn't even know that.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I must have left them at home, Rex. I'll go get them. Okay. So basically just question and answers. I'm sure that these four can keep things going. If you have questions. Sure.
Oh, I was just thinking, I thought you were opening up. I didn't need to catch up.
No, please, go ahead. Ask your question. You just can't ask me because I'll be right back.
Well, my question is for Dan, and others could chime in too. I've known Dan 36 years. We were friends, and
Ever since you got me to start a fight in the cafeteria.
it's right. And but I have totally, wow, it's so weird to have listened to your presentation and realize how underappreciated you've been for so long, and how far you've come. You know, I've seen you do a lot of iterations.
Thanks.
Until you're here, and so, and I've also underappreciated something that happened to me, and you know I had an NDA.
Indeed, yes.
An NDE, yeah, thanks for marking that. And I have really just kind of forgotten and gone. It's amazing how I underutilized a lot of things in my life. And so, while you were talking, I really just for the first time really started chewing on it, like really thinking about it. And I have a question about it. Like there's a lot of what I understood and what I don't believe about it, but there was this other thing that there was this other being that was in my NDA, and I knew it was there, and I never reflected really in depth about it, but it knew me. It knew me and knew how I was feeling. It knew what I was. That knew me had done all the background search and was waiting for me. And as I was going through my kind of hooky-looky experience, it kind of knew exactly when to say something, what to say, and how to say it to try to move me. And I remember feeling like inside, like, oh, I can't trust this. Like there's something that I'm not trusting here. You know what I mean? Even though it's friendly, and it's all this. And so part of that sense that I don't trust this. And it was about reincarnation was part of it. Yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Go in there.
We'll take care of
It
everything.
was just like, it's too easy. This is too easy, and I'm not sure what I want to do here. And I'm trying to, and I don't know what I'm experiencing. And at the same time, as I perceive it, I know I'm having understanding. I'm like, oh, that's what that is. Oh, that's what that is. There's like this unfolding of knowing.
Yeah.
And this was just waiting there. And as I had a thing, we go, oh, what's this?
Yeah.
Really?
As
But I didn't trust it. And I never went, what the hell was that?
Well, One of the things I came across in my research, I don't want to take much time, 'cause I'm sure everybody else has so much, but there's a thing where we don't have telepathy here. And that has been cut off. I did a whole video of this on my YouTube channel. It's been cut off for a reason, because if we had it, I wouldn't have to spend 40 minutes explaining a brief fraction of my research. I would be able to just look at you, and you would be able to know not only what I'm trying to tell you, but everything I've read, everything that I've looked at, my personal experience. I would just be able to send it to you, and then you would know what I know. And then you would then compare that to what you know, and then within a few minutes, we would all know everything. And we wouldn't be here very long.
Okay.
Right? So something happens when you're born, your mind is wiped, and then you have to start over. Now, when you start over and you have to communicate with language, I think I'm a terrible communicator. I could be better. Like when she was talking, I was like, oh yeah, I should have said that.
That's your problem.
I should have said everything she said. I completely agree, but I forgot to mention it. And then she said it like, well, I'm glad Jenny said it because now I don't have to repeat myself. But the telepathy thing is there. So when you meet another being, you've forgotten how to do that. Now you can look right into your mind to know everything about you. They know exactly what to say, how to appear, who to look like. Shape-shifting is a thing because when you don't have a physical body, when you die, most people will cling to this image because they're stuck to it. That's what they remember. But you don't have to be this. You can transform yourself. I've OBers email me and say, when I'm out of my body, I can become a dragon. I can become anything I want to be. I don't have to look like this. So you're caught off guard. They know everything about you. You haven't figured out how to use your telepathy yet, but you're communicating that way. We don't have a mouth when we're out of our bodies. We don't talk with voices. And so they have all the advantage. So it's just a matter of using your intuition like you did. Plus yours is different. I said 80-20, 80 heavenly, 20 hellish, but actually it's more like a little fraction of that is the void. Some NDEers like Sean there ended up in a void. And that's the most advantageous place to be because there's nothing there except maybe entities you might meet on one-on-one, or you could be totally alone in the void. So that's kind of the best place you could start to think there, remember. And really all you have to do is ask yourself the right questions. Who am I? Where did I come from? I want to remember everything. And that information will just start flooding back to you because it's not really forgotten. You're just not asking the right questions. So does that answer your question? Yeah.
I have a question for any one of you. You guys can figure out who best should answer.
Or everybody can answer.
It's about sensitivity. I don't seem to have any. And I'm not joking. When my son was born, as I watched him grow up, he was always a very sensitive little boy. And still is a sensitive grown man today. But me, not one.
Can you define sensitivity in your words?
Well, sensitive to your feelings, sensitive to atmospheric bounce.
Okay. So kind of feels like you're wearing something or there's something covering you that makes you feel...
I don't feel anything. I don't feel that. I feel nothing.
Do you know what time you're born? I'm serious. Do you know?
Well,
Here we go.
There goes
Because if you do, I have a feeling, in my opinion, that's a conjunction in your chart, is that you're here to maybe, that's part of your personality. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. That's how you get through life. Because I am, in a way, I'm sensitive to a certain, I'm not sensitive, I'm sensitive. But I know what you mean. I can put up a wall or where I don't feel things either. And I can make something go away within seconds. And I can be really harsh, but this is more in my relationships. So it depends on where it is in your chart. So if it's in your first house, if you have your time, I can take a look at it though.
That could be a facet of your of your makeup, a component of who you are? Is it something that you would like to change? Because that's where the difference lies, and if that's what something you want to get better at.
Well, I don't know that I do or don't.
Okay.
What's your birthday?
My son brought me here because just a couple of months ago, I was told I had 3 months to a year to live. I wasn't worried about it. I'm not worried about it right now. I take it as it comes. My son is, you know, I figured I'd worked my ass off my whole life. I did the government's bidding too for a bit.
And they came from Calgary, Canada, by the way, in a car.
No.
Oh, no, from Kentucky. I'm sorry, somebody else came from Calgary.
But
7:45 a.m.
What's the birthday?
April 26th.
What's your name, sir? Sorry. Your name, I'm just gonna put you in my thing.
Oh.
Go ahead.
First or last?
Just your first name.
Greg.
Okay, go ahead. So, April 26th. Year?
55.
7:45 a.m.
Yep.
This is a great app. Whoever wants to learn Vedic astrology, it's just for on the go. But it's
Heidi's a Vedic astrologer.
Anyway, my son's worried about where I'm gonna go.
Well, while she's looking that up, let me just.
I wanna go to sleep.
He's like, I just want to go away.
Let me just
city,
say.
city of birth, reborn in.
Pikeville, Kentucky.
While she's doing that, what my research when I learned about this new AI, I realized that there's two separate things going on. There's your brain, physical brain, and that has its own program, whatever you're born with. And then there's your mind, and that is eternal and non-physical. And I think that Jenny mentioned it. We have all these filters. If you Google list of cognitive biases, you will be shocked to find out how many of them there are that can mess up your thinking. Now, my point is that is an intentional design into human beings to keep us from figuring things out. Because we can come together as groups, and 51 million people are going to fly pretty much safely this holiday season alone, out of the U.S. alone. There's air traffic. We engineer aircraft. People come together and design all these magnificent things. 6,000 years. We can't design a societal structure that works, and we keep making the same mistakes. So those two things don't logically go together. That can't be an accident. Okay? So the same person that knows not to step off a cliff and die will strap C4 to their chest and go off and blow themselves up because of all this different programming running on their head. And when you become aware of these biases and filters, you can work around them. But I don't know if that's what, I don't know. It could, some people just have a no sensitivity, and that's okay, because as long as you don't do anything wrong, it can be an advantage in some situations.
So I'm going to tell you what.
She's going to tell you right now.
So I'm going to tell you that was 100% right when you say that, because you have this thing in your chart, and it's called, you have K2 conjunct the moon with Jupiter. So K2 is here, and when it's in your chart, it's like a planet, but it's not a planet. It's the node of the moon. So when I look at a chart, I'm going to look at the whole analysis of your first house. There's 12 houses. There's 12 signs. There's these nakshatras, and you'll hear about it when I give my presentation. But you're heavily influenced by K2 like me. K2 is here for moksha, meaning basically something happens to you at a young age. You might not even be aware. It could be a past life or something that you've decided basically you're able to detach from emotionally anything. And it happened young, and now it's like a guarded wall. But I'm going to tell you, you have Mars in the first house. You are a warrior. Like, you're able to push through anything. And even with them saying that, don't be surprised if some miraculous thing happens. Because when you have Mars in the first house, and you're actually a Taurus ascendant too. What just happened? How am I on this?
So what would that Taurus ascendant mean for him, Heidi?
So Taurus ascendant, I'm going to put you in my real software because I don't trust this app. It's great for on the fly, but
One of the most accessible ways that I like to describe astrology, especially for someone that has no, hasn't been introduced to it, is I like to look at it as a kind of identification system. It has yet to be fully confirmed whether or not this is a type of AI construct, astrology itself, as a kind of filtration system. So the soul being expansive, just huge, this massive, just crazy, huge thing, it needs to be trickled down, filtered down so that we can incarnate here. And so the way that I understand astrology is the planets and stars that you're born, that snapshot in time, the moment that you cross that threshold out of your mother, that point in time is a snapshot. It's a type of filtration system that your soul has gone through. It's a means of identification. The planets all correspond to systems in your body, endocrine systems, hormone systems, reproductive systems. All of the planets essentially affect these different parts of the body, including the personality. So that's just a kind of an introduction to it, because if you don't have a concept of astrology,
None.
yeah.
It's never been something I was remotely interested in.
Let me follow up on that real quick before Heidi gets into depth with it. And I'm going to talk about this afternoon, but I think what I get from you is, number one, you're not worried about it. Number two, you're okay with it. And I think you're at a place where when you do come to that place, and I think it's going to be a lot longer than 3 or 4 months, just between you and me, when you do get to that place that we're all going to get to where we're going somewhere else, you are already at the place where you're going to be able to sit there and say, okay,
Yeah.
I'm leaving this life. Door 1, door 2, door 3, you're going to be able to sit there and think about it and pick the one you want. You got absolutely nothing to worry about, Greg, in my humble opinion.
One more thing I want to say.
Yeah, there you go. You're
never
locked
gonna-
and loaded.
You're never going to have to come back to this. You're never going to have to come back to this prison ever again.
Well, really?
Yeah.
He's locked and loaded.
Again,
He's
it may
locked
be
and
due
loaded.
to my ignorance, and I don't claim
Yeah.
to be a smart man.
You know what, though? That there's a reason
You
why
are
that's
very
saying
smart.
ignorance is bliss.
You're very creative too.
I can't draw a stick man.
You're a psychic. You're very psychic. Very intuitive.
He's a dowsing
I'm
rod.
glad you never figured that out.
You are so psychic. You have the same moon as her, which she's psychic, but you have it conjunct with K2, which makes it like way more psychic. So you might not even sometimes be aware of it, but you have a leadership. People are going to always listen to you. People are going to always want to go to you for advice. You're like the guru.
US
you're
Army.
He's the 8 of clubs.
He was in the Army, yeah.
That's in his chart for sure. He's got outside of Mercury in the 12th and in Aries, but that's definite.
My question was, have you always been that way since childhood, or did this something you became cognitive of later on?
Was that question for me?
Yes.
And you remember I've always had this mental fortitude. And I don't know what else to call it. But yeah, I mean, I've just never been a real sensitive person.
Even in childhood? So
Even in
with
childhood,
a pet that
if
was lost,
if I fell and cut myself open, I didn't sweat it.
So I'd say it's a strength, not a weakness.
I agree.
Well, maybe, I don't know.
It's a purpose, I mean, I think it's.
Like I came here because my son, I've never seen the boy get so interested in researching anything. In bowling in college, and couldn't get an A in bowling. But
How do you mess up bowling?
Man, you can't make a $200 ball that's supposed to hook on lanes.
Well, I flunked PE one year myself.
I know my dad said, boy, you can't even play
I just didn't show up. Anybody have any other questions as well?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
to be
that's
entertaining,
fantastic
but
stuff.
really, I'm sitting here, you guys are talking about being sensitive, this and that. I had no sensitivity like
You're
that.
psychic, as all can be. You're intuitive. You know things that happen before they happen. You know who's good, who's
Well,
not.
I stayed alive, I'll put it like that.
You're very logical.
Huh?
Yeah.
Very logical.
Oh, yeah.
That's okay, that's good. I use more of my logic than my emotions a lot of times. That's not maybe what I was able to deal with.
I'm not emotional.
Yeah.
Hillary?
I have a comment that I feel compelled to mention to you, Greg, is that, and I've known you for all of a couple hours, but I think that the comment you made about example getting cut as a child, or if you were to get cut, hypothetically, it wouldn't bother you. It's probably because you realize that this isn't this flesh body. You're more than that. Perhaps I just wanted to say that might sound corny, but I just feel like what everyone I think. But you're just I think a little bit beyond. There's no rhyme or reason except that you're.
Well, to me, I thought maybe it was a fault with my psyche or something that I couldn't.
I think you understand more than.
In your case, I think it's a strength for you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be worried about my dad if I were you.
I'm gonna take this as a clue what we might expect whenever this is our last round. Now we know.
Exactly.
This is the kind of thing you can look for in people and kind of know.
No sweat.
Yeah, it's a really cool attitude.
What, Greg?
Well, you mentioned door 1, 2, and 3. That's why I'm here. I was gonna sleep, but now if there's some fun going on.
Well, with this life right here, there's a little bit of fun always going on.
The other question, Heidi, I've been wanting to ask you this is, what Vedic astrology is very complicated, so kudos to you for being an oracle of it. I want to ask
oracle, Heidi.
the young, but what type of Vedic astrology do you fancy?
So there's a million types, obviously.
Yeah.
You do the research, and the thing about me is I just like facts. I mean, I don't like for me it's even hard to do tarot cards because I want to see, the proof is in the actual results. That's how my mind works. So I never believed astrology because I didn't believe I was a Virgo. And boom, it hit me. I learned the basics. I learned the houses. It's more about the signs and the calculations. I don't get too complicated into a lot of the stuff that I think a lot of times people go too far into the Vedic astrology and you have too many. I mean, there's a lot of things you can look at. But when you try to play God and tell people certain things, because you can predict certain. If you want to predict and see when I'm going to die, you can see it in the charts. Mm-hmm. But could it mean 100,000 different other things? Yeah. Now we have
There are names, like Indian names associated with different types, and I know that there's
There's KP astrology.
Right. And then south and north.
And so I use Kala software. I learned it was in South Indian chart, but I know the north. All it is it's just diagonals versus squares.
Okay.
And I mean, there's so many different calculations. I go with the typical, somebody asked me this. Who asked me this last night?
Now, Heidi, isn't it true that you're sort of pioneering the use of the nakshatras?
Well, I mean, a lot of people do. But yes, I've been using the nakshatras. Okay. So I can see my chart Western way too. So I can see me as a Sagittarius ascendant, but not really. That's what I try to pretend. So, but my Scorpio ascendant, because nobody really sees the real me. Nobody really knows how destructive I was to myself, when I was younger, and what I used to do. I was so ridiculous. And I tell people during readings what they need to hear. But I'm not gonna go up and announce it on YouTube. If you heard some of the stuff I did, you'd be like, Jesus God, So, and that's why it's secrets, It's you keep this stuff to yourself, but then if you know it's gonna help somebody, you help. But where was I going with this? But Western astrology.
I was just letting you know the live show.
Oh, that's probably about waiting call.
It looks like it's getting video.
Video right there.
They're audio but not video. That's what live chat's saying.
Stop it when you start.
Refresh.
Because it sure looks like the video is there, but. Folks, don't be shy.
Open conversation.
Does anybody know how to end a live stream on your phone?
Just back out of it, I think.
Are you sure you want to stop streaming? I am.